Well, alright, a symphonic progressive metal album based off of War of the Worlds. And it's only part one of who knows how many albums. I'm excited, you're excited, let's dive in. War of the Worlds Part 1 by Symphony X. So Symphony X is a US progressive metal, symphonic metal... Hold on for just a second. Hello? Yeah, I was actually just talking about it. Yeah? It isn't by Symphony X. Yeah, I know Michael Romeo. He's the lead guitarist. Solo project. Yeah, well, his last solo project was back in, like, 1994 with The Darker Chapter. Oh! It sounds just like a Symphony X album. Personnel are different? Michael's the only one that's left on it? Okay, well, this changes the review. No need to be all snippy. No, you can... Okay, I'm hanging up now. Okay, change that! War of the Worlds Part 1 by Michael Romeo. So, Michael Romeo is the lead guitarist and producer from Symphony X. Symphony X, as I had mentioned before, US progressive metal, symphonic metal, mega Goliath within the progressive rock community. Incorporate myths and legends and concept albums galore, so it doesn't overly surprise me that this one sounds very, very similar. Michael Romeo is very much of like that shredding type of a guitar work. Like if you've heard Symphony X, you're going to love and hear a lot of that influence on here. As I had mentioned with the person on the phone there, the personnel has definitely changed up. Michael is the only one that is here from Symphony X, even though it really feels like a Symphony X album. Probably something from their Iconoclast album, or even maybe the Odyssey would be a much better comparison of the two, both being a concept album. So I want to talk first about the concept album overall, as it relates to the story of War of the Worlds. And unlike a past War of the Worlds album that had been done within a concept album, this one doesn't really follow a narrative flow as much. This one is much more of like a concept to concept as opposed to a narrative flow. And in some ways this is a welcome, because obviously this is going to be compared to the Jeff Wayne album. Choosing to follow it more in a concept as opposed to a storyline is probably for the best. And what this allows Michael to do within the production work is kind of pick and choose where he wants to go within the story. Like, he's not committed into an ideology of where to go. He's allowed to kind of stretch his legs and move around within that. I have to admit, this album really surprised me, and I found myself really diving in and getting into the album quite a bit. The overall structure of this album is done very well. I never feel bored. I never feel like you know, I want to skip any of the tracks. I do wish that it did follow a little bit more cohesively within the narrative flow, as opposed to being much more of that conceptual kind of follow through with the storyline. And I'll get to that a little bit later. Some of the highlights within this, my favorite track off of this album is the fourth track of F-Keen Robots, or, you know. But what I love about this track is the use of that kind of dubstep drop that many other bands have tried to use. Like, this was something that Frost was trying to play with a little bit within Falling Satellites. This was something that Next to None was really using within their latest album. And I wish more progressive bands were doing something with this kind of a technique, because even though dubstep has come and gone, I really like that presentation, and there's so much that progressive rock can do with that style, and I love what Michael is able to do within that stylized. Once we get into that, it just flows all over the place. I love how chaotic it is. I love those chaotic resolutions that the band has. Just a great string of music, and definitely a real highlight on the band. But there is a number of times when I'm listening to a track and it reminds me of something else, and maybe it's just Michael's ability to like really find something and then put his own little spin on it. The beginning of Jinn, the song that follows F-Keen Robots, reminds me of the last suite from the AA suite from Dream Theater from Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Just the way that it opens up, it's the same rhythm, it's the same time signature. It did draw me out a little bit to be like, oh wait, that's a Dream Theater technique. And this was something that was found throughout the album, where it kept like pinging of like, oh, that was something from that band, or oh, that was a technique from this artist. And it's odd because there's another track, the second last track of Oblivion, feels very much like the Illumination Theory from Dream Theater's self-titled work. And again, like, I know that Symphony X and Dream Theater are kind of like the Goliaths within the progressive metal movement, but I was surprised that there's so much of like a, oh, that's where that's from. And it's almost jarring how closely the main theme within that song is. And this even applies to Symphony X as well. Like, one of the later tracks of War Machine, this one definitely feels like it was something off of the Odyssey from Symphony X, where I felt like he was almost playing a little too close to home in that sense. He was a little too, like he wasn't moving too far out of the box in that respects. And it would have been really neat to see Michael trying something without needing the rest of the band to kind of, I don't want to say hold him back, but for him just to kind of go off the map and really try something exciting. And I felt like he really captured that with like F-King Robots. And I didn't really feel that so much with War Machine, even though War Machine is a fantastic interlude, musical interlude. But again, as I said, it did feel like a musical interlude that we would have had from like the Odyssey from Symphony X. And even though this album is like really bombastic, really energetic, and just all over the place in terms of a brutality approach of just like go, 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 I do enjoy the fact that it did take a little bit of a time to really kind of slow itself down. And in fact, the longest track off of here, being Believe at 8 minutes and 22 seconds, is the most somber. It allowed itself to take a breather, but not compromise the energy that it was really kind of building up to. And I think this was a really smart move on Michael's part of including this where it is, because it almost captures itself at the midpoint of the album. And putting it here allows for much more of a reflection of where we've been and allows us to kind of move forward from here. And the last tracks of Constellations really feels like it was from either the Odyssey or something from the Divine Wings of Tragedy, like the last song off of that album. And it's interesting that this is in fact the last song off of War of the Worlds Part 1, because when it ends, it doesn't feel like it really ends the album. And I know this is part 1, so it's not really an ending, but it does feel like it cuts off really, really fast. And I'm like, wait, where's the rest of the track? Like, where's the actual ending? And whenever you're doing like a part 1, you still should have some kind of an interlude. There still should be like a finale. And I just feel like Constellations didn't really provide that. It was just kind of an afterthought of just like, oh, right, we're kind of running out of time on here. Let's just end it and make it part 1. So it was a little bit of a misstep in my mind for this. It will be interesting to see where part 2 kind of picks up from here. So I mean, overall, I still really enjoyed this album, and it was an album that I found myself turning to when I needed something a little bit more heavy with a little bit more energy, just a little bit more of an oomph. And this album definitely provided that. Overall, I would definitely say download this album. This is one that you'll want to have on your computer, but not invest too much time on it. Again, I feel like it didn't really breach out too much. Like, there were some moments that really broke out of the box and did things that normally wouldn't be presented on a typical Symphony X album. But again, I did feel like there was a lot of time and energy spent within the comfortable zone of playing it. And I don't think the album really sought out to break new ground. I thought it was just a fun little side project that Michael was having a lot of fun with. So yeah, download this album and have a good time with it. So that's about it for War of the Worlds Part 1 by Michael Romeo. What did you guys think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.